Have you ever walked into a room and suddenly become extremely aware of yourself? You notice how you're standing, how you're walking, where your hands are, what your face looks like, and whether someone might be judging you. You say something slightly awkward and then spend the next hour replaying it in your head, wondering if everyone noticed. But here's the strange part. While you're thinking about yourself, most other people are thinking about themselves. This is known in psychology as the spotlight effect, and it reveals something surprisingly important about how the human mind works. Imagine a simple stick figure walking into a room. Above its head is a giant spotlight. The figure looks nervous because it believes everyone in the room is watching. One person looks at their phone. Another is talking to a friend. Someone else is thinking about what they're going to eat later. But inside the stick figure's mind, every pair of eyes appears to be pointing directly at it. The spotlight feels real, even though most of it exists only in perception. This happens because your brain has direct access to your own thoughts, feelings, mistakes, and sensations. You know when your voice sounds strange to you. You know when you're nervous. You know when you accidentally say the wrong word. You experience every tiny detail of your own behavior from the inside. But you don't have that same access to other people's minds. Because your own experience is so vivid, your brain can naturally overestimate how visible that experience is to everyone else. Imagine the stick figure wearing a tiny stain on its shirt. It looks down and immediately thinks, everyone is going to notice this. The stain suddenly becomes enormous. In reality, people may not notice it at all. Some might see it and forget it within seconds. Others might never look in that direction. But the person wearing the shirt has a completely different experience because they know the stain is there. This is one of the most interesting things about self-consciousness. Knowing something about yourself can make it feel more obvious than it actually is. And this doesn't only happen with appearance. It can happen with your voice, your clothes, your accent, your expressions, your mistakes, your social behavior, and even your emotions. You might feel nervous during a conversation and assume the other person can clearly see it. You might blush and think everyone noticed. You might stumble over a sentence and believe the conversation has been permanently damaged. But human attention is not a permanent surveillance camera. People constantly shift their focus. Their attention moves from you to themselves, from the conversation to their phone, from what you said to what they need to do next. Now imagine two stick figures talking. One is speaking, but above the first figure's head is a thought bubble saying, "Do I sound stupid?" Above the second figure's head is another bubble saying, "I hope I don't sound stupid." Both people are monitoring themselves at the same time. And suddenly the situation looks completely different. What feels like judgment may actually be mutual self-awareness. This is why social situations can sometimes feel much more intense from the inside than they look from the outside. Your brain is constructing a detailed internal movie about what is happening, but the other person may be experiencing an entirely different movie. They may not even remember the moment that you spent hours analyzing. Think about a small mistake you made several months ago. You might still remember exactly what happened. You might remember the expression on someone's face, the words you used, and the uncomfortable feeling that followed. Now ask yourself how many mistakes other people made that same day. Can you remember them? Probably not. That's an important clue. Your own mistakes receive detailed mental storage because they happened to you. Other people's mistakes often disappear from your memory because they weren't personally important. This creates an illusion of symmetry. You remember your embarrassing moments vividly, so you assume other people remember them vividly too. But they have their own lives, their own concerns, and their own moments they are replaying. Imagine a classroom filled with 50 stick figures. Every single one has a small thought bubble above its head. One is thinking about an exam. Another is thinking about their appearance. Another is worried about a message. Another is wondering whether they made a strange face 5 minutes ago. The room looks crowded, but everyone is trapped inside their own perspective. This is one reason the spotlight effect can be so powerful. Human beings naturally experience the world from a first-person perspective. You are always standing at the center of your own conscious experience. That doesn't mean you're the center of everyone else's attention. It simply means your brain has no choice but to experience life from your own point of view. And once you understand that, certain everyday situations start to look different. Imagine you're about to give a presentation. The stick figure stands behind a microphone, looking at a crowd. The crowd appears enormous. Every face seems serious. The figure's hands begin to shake. A thought appears. They can see I'm nervous. But now zoom out. The audience isn't one giant mind. It's dozens of individuals, each processing the presentation through their own experiences. Some are listening carefully. Some are thinking about what comes next. Some are distracted. Some may actually be nervous for the speaker. The audience isn't a single judgment machine. It's a collection of people with limited attention. This doesn't mean nobody notices you. Of course, people notice things. The point is that noticing is not the same as intensely evaluating. Someone can notice that you made a mistake and still forget it moments later. Someone can notice that you're nervous and still respect you. Someone can notice your awkward moment and feel empathy because they've experienced the same thing. Your brain sometimes turns a small observation into a much larger imagined judgment. And that distinction matters. Because if you believe everyone is constantly evaluating you, you may start changing your behavior to avoid being noticed. You might speak less. You might avoid asking questions. You might stop trying new things. You might choose the safest option simply because you don't want to look foolish. The strange part is that the fear of being judged can become more limiting than actual judgment. Picture the stick figure standing at the edge of a stage. There are two paths. One says, do what feels meaningful. The other says, do what looks safest. The figure chooses the second path because it imagines a crowd watching. But the crowd isn't actually following every step. The figure is carrying an imaginary audience everywhere it goes. And this is where the idea becomes useful rather than simply interesting. You don't have to convince yourself that nobody cares what you do. That would be unrealistic. Instead, you can learn to question the size of the audience your mind is imagining. When you feel embarrassed, ask yourself, how much attention am I giving this compared with how much attention other people are likely giving it? When you're afraid to speak, ask, am I responding to actual feedback, or am I responding to a prediction about what people might think? These questions don't magically remove self-consciousness. They simply create distance between the feeling and the conclusion. And that distance can be powerful, because feeling watched doesn't prove that you're being watched. Feeling judged doesn't prove that you're being judged. Feeling embarrassed doesn't mean you've done something seriously wrong. Sometimes the mind is simply making your own experience look larger because you're standing inside it. Imagine the stick figure finally turning around and looking at the room without the imaginary spotlight. Nothing dramatic changes. The people are still there. The conversations continue. The world hasn't suddenly become completely accepting or completely judgment-free. But the giant spotlight has disappeared, and the figure realizes something simple. Being visible is not the same as being constantly observed. Being noticed is not the same as being judged. And making a mistake is not the same as becoming the mistake. You are going to have awkward moments. You are going to say things you wish you had said differently. Sometimes people will notice. Sometimes they will judge. That's part of being human. But most moments don't deserve the permanent importance that your mind may give them. People move on. Conversations continue. Attention shifts. Life keeps moving. And the next time you walk into a room feeling as though everyone is watching, remember the room full of stick figures. Everyone has their own thoughts. Everyone has their own worries. Everyone is carrying a private world that you cannot see. You are the main character of your own experience, but you are not the main character inside everyone else's mind. And realizing that doesn't make you less important. It gives you something much more valuable: the freedom to stop performing for an audience that may never have been watching in the first place.